NBA draft news, Markelle Fultz, Boston Celtics, Lonzo Ball, trade #1 pick. Who's the better prospect? Because as it is noted, next year Ben Simmons is a rookie. So just like Joel Embiid was a rookie last year in his 3rd actual season in the NBA, but playing time, if you don't step on the court, you're considered a rookie. So the Rookie of the Year race will be interesting once again. It usually is. And it's going to be one of the more, I would assume, which I shouldn't, but more packed races in terms of like how many of these guys could have tremendous first-year campaigns. Where to begin? Let's begin with Markelle Fultz. Markelle Fultz decided to only work out with the Boston Celtics. For whatever random reason, there is some kind of backlash to this. Markelle Fultz is going to be the #1 pick. Markelle Fultz is going to be drafted by the Boston Celtics. The reason he's only working out for them is because I do think it would be some form of waste of time for him to be elsewhere. And if these are the conversations that are happening, like the Celtics aren't drafting Lonzo Ball, the Josh Jackson as the #1 pick is a nice contrarian point of view, and there are certain arguments that are to be made, but Markelle Fultz is the best prospect in this draft, and not does that always work out to be, but still. And then if you're gonna criticize Markelle Fultz, where's the criticism for Lonzo? Not LeVar, Lonzo. Lonzo only working out for the Los Angeles Lakers. So there's criticism towards Markelle Fultz for only working out with the Celtics, but there's none for the guy who I'd say there's more of a chance that the Lakers don't draft Lonzo Ball than it would be the Celtics not drafting Markelle Fultz. 1 and 2, set it in stone. Put your money on it if you want. It's not going to change.
I think that most people just don't want to scrutinize Lonzo Ball because they just don't want LeVar Ball to take a look at it and then come back and ask them for a follow-up interview to talk about it. I think they're just trying to avoid any situation.
Who's they?
Anyone. I think they just don't want him. They don't want LeVar Ball to be like, you know what, you scrutinize my son, I'm going to come and talk to you. Not that they're scared of him going after them, they just don't want to have any form of communication with him and loop him into the circle. So maybe they just thought, the kid's probably been scrutinized enough because of his dad, let's just leave him be. I find this very interesting. I've always found it interesting that players' prospective picks go and work out with teams before the draft. It's, maybe I'm just a sucker for a good old spontaneous pick, and I don't want to know who they play with. I just want to wait until that day, and they're like, Pelicans, choose whoever that comes in, and they just choose a random 12th round pick. It's just like, it's a clear indicator. Like in the past, Jason, has it ever happened that someone has worked out with a certain amount of teams or a handful of teams and has never went to one of those teams that they've worked out with and went to a completely different one? Has that happened in the past?
Of course. Not off the top of my head, but it happens pretty regularly. There'll be, I'm sure, for one, it depends on if you don't have the #1 or #2 pick, well then it's kind of up in the air. I mean, in this case, I think Josh Jackson would technically be the 3rd pick, but it's all speculative because picks 3 through whatever, and in some cases, picks 1 through whatever have multiple workouts for the prospects that they're looking at. Because are you talking about the #1
I'm talking about like #1 and #2 pick. Does it ever happen to like, I'm not talking about down the line, the 58th pick suddenly is training with someone and no one knows. I'm talking about if a #1 and #2 pick would go with a team that they didn't work out with beforehand, like that team didn't go with them and went with someone randomly different.
Rarely is there such 2 or 3 great options at the #1 pick. Usually it's like, well, John Wall is going to be the #1 pick because watch his tape, that guy is going to change the Wizards franchise. LeBron James is the #1 pick since he was 14 years old. MJ was not the #1 pick, correct? Am I making this up? No, MJ wasn't the #1 pick. Magic Johnson was though. And Hakeem was a #1 pick. Like, I'm trying to think here. See, you really stumped me, man.
It's just because it's an interesting thing.
It is an interesting thing. I don't know because I can't go back far enough to think of like the 80s and early 90s.
If you want, I can adjust another question. I'm just interested. Who did LeBron James work out with before he chose the
I think 4 or 5 teams.
He did? Yeah, I can imagine that like the hotter the prospect you are, the more teams are going to come in.
Besides the fact that there were scouts from every single NBA team outside of like the ones who were already in the playoffs at that point at his games in high school to watch him play. Hakeem Olajuwon was the #1. Jordan was #3. That was the Barkley draft, John Stockton. But like Michael Jordan and Charles Barkley, Sam Perkins and Sam Bowie during their time at North Carolina and Kentucky were also really toutedly high prospects, but it was more like, who's gonna be #2? We know we're gonna take Hakeem Olajuwon, the guy who decided to pick up a basketball when he was like 17 and was better than everybody else.
So you're saying, if I'm clear, at this point, it's it's maybe a little bit more focus on it because these two players at the #1 pick, or 2 or 3, are more closely associated than anyone else.
I think it's just, let's find a way to criticize any one of these prospects as much as we can. Let's find anything we can hold on to.
Yeah.
Like, if Boston's going to draft, there's my logic. Boston's going to draft Markelle Fultz. Boston doesn't need to see any other prospect. If that's who they're gonna, that's who they're gonna draft, then go with it. I mean, I understand that the idea of like, let's work out Josh Jackson to see what he could possibly bring to the table. But my other feeling is that they don't have to work out in your gym. A lot of these notes are shared, not necessarily between GM to GM, but the scouts, their job has been to follow Markelle Fultz and all the other prospects for now a year. So they've seen all the tape on Josh Jackson. I don't think there's that much that could shine through in an open workout from somebody else in the draft going to Boston or Los Angeles for them to be like, you know what, man, after all the tape we've seen and how much we want to draft Markelle Fultz, I feel like now Dennis Smith worked out for us and he just seems like a great guy. We're gonna draft him #1 overall.
Yeah.
It's not how it works.
Well, especially in this example, it's more set in stone, I think, than what we've seen in recent years because it's the Boston Celtics at #1 pick. This is a team that just got to the Eastern Conference Finals, thanks to what is daylight robbery with their deal with the Brooklyn Nets, I believe, but they got them the first round pick here. So it seems like what they have is they already have a very well-oiled machine set up that they just need to add a piece that they don't need to, in a way, focus as much and panic because they're not building an entire team around them. It's not like when you're looking at the 76ers that are looking solely at Ben Simmons and that's the only choice because Jesus Christ, we need to build something here. We need to build it around them.
There's actually a big similarity though between Simmons and Fultz, not necessarily in their style of play, but not making the NCAA tournament, coasting through the last 10-20% of their NCAA seasons, and coasting is a very lenient word. It's not a fair word to use, but still, the team wasn't playing as well, and a lot of people, the takeaway is, well, if you're that good of a prospect, why don't you make your team better? It doesn't work out that way. Not everyone goes and plays for Kentucky, and you can be a mediocre player and your team wins every single game and you get drafted in the top 20. In terms of their actual, like, who has the higher ceiling, I still think it's Ben Simmons. I really like Markelle Fultz. I like his court vision. I like his build as a point guard. And as I've always said, man, point guards with big butts. Kyle Lowry, Chris Paul, bigger the butt, better the point guard.
Kyrie get a booty back there?
Not as much, not as big as Chris Paul's, man.
Steph Curry, not really either.
True, as our comments section put it, yeah, man, them point guards are thick.
Edwin is shooting as the weirdest.
It's true, man, Edwin.
Just think about it, Edwin. Low center of gravity. It happens in more sports than anything else. So there's actual Twitter pages for Eden Hazard, Chelsea's attacking mid's bum. They talk about his bum all the time because he's so low, small center of gravity, and he blocks people out with his bum.
You must mean at Eden Hazard's ass.
There you go. Take a look. And there's an actual photo of him lying on the ground with a well-rounded.
You also must mean Eden Hazard's booty.
Yep. More pages than one.
One has more followers than the other, obviously.
How many? What's the standard follower page on this? Like, I think
it's got 2,000.
2,000, nice.
That's not bad.
Yep, and there it is. All the photos of him lying down, bending over.
Pictures of his bum.
See, guys are exploited as well for this sort of stuff. Don't think this is just. No, I'm joking. It's by far and away swayed one direction, but there's still some.
Lastly, by the way,
some sites here.
And we could do a more in-depth video in terms of comparing Simmons and Fultz. Actually, I'm going to tell people to do this one. I'm going to go to B-Ball Breakdowns page and watch his 25-minute breakdown of Fultz and his like 20-minute breakdown of Simmons from last year. If you want like the actual highlights to go with it, just go over there. You'll get it. And I agree with Coach Nick's perspective on especially Ben Simmons and what his strengths and weaknesses are. I just watched it, part of it again last night. But there's a very easy, in my opinion, if I'm Danny Ainge, man, I am not trading that #1 pick for Paul George or Jimmy Butler. I'm gonna do what I think GMs really have now thought about more so than ever. I'm waiting for LeBron James to stop being LeBron James. Because to trade for your #1 pick and mortgage the future for Paul George next year or Jimmy Butler, look what happened in that Celtics series against the Cavaliers. Yes, with a lot of heart and grit, they got one win. I don't think Paul George and Jimmy Butler, alongside Al Horford, Jay Crowder, and the creativity of Brad Stevens, and I like the Celtics, could even go 7 games against the Cleveland Cavaliers. I think they are outright better than every single team in the East as long as LeBron James is on the floor. And the one team that's really stifling them is the Golden State Warriors. So the only team that is marginally that much better, at least through 2 games of the NBA Finals, is that. So, I mean, Jimmy Butler and Paul George, maybe. But you're not going to get both of them. That's not a realistic situation without getting rid of your entire bench. So Paul George added to the Celtics, cool. Another 5-game series. Jimmy Butler added, cool. Maybe a 6-game series. But why would you do that? Why make that move? I get it. The fans are not going to be happy with that. They're going to want to compete. But you're going to be able to watch one of the best youngish teams in basketball with Jaylen Brown, who's a freak athlete, and you're going to have Markelle Fultz in that mix. And if he turns out to be even half the prospect we think he is, that's still a pretty damn good player. And then you have to figure out what they're going to have to do with Isaiah Thomas, because I don't think they're going to pay him the $35 million a year by the time he's a free agent.
Yeah.
Do you think contrarian, do you trade?
No, I don't think there's any faults in your argument.
I don't know, what's the point? There's obviously
it.
faults in my argument. There's always faults in everyone's arguments.
You never even got it?
Faults in your argument, I don't get it.
Marcus Fultz.
Faults?
Yeah,
faults?
so I don't know, you just like made it some sort of close outlook.
All right, that's fair.
I'm clutching at straws.
That's fair.
Just give me
it's fair.
Just like give me it.